Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another Game Explained discussion. I'm your host, Steve Bowling, and I'm joined today by a very special guest, Blessing Adeoye Jr., who is host of PS I Love You XOXO and a producer over at Kinda Funny Games. How are you doing today, Blessing?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing, man?
I am doing all right, man. Ghost of Tsushima. I'm excited to talk
Oh
about
man.
this. We've had the game for a while. Like it feels like pretty long by review standards, like a couple of solid weeks with it now, right?
Yeah, no, legit. This is, I think, so far in terms of games that I've reviewed while working at Kind of Funny, because I just joined Kind of Funny in January. This is probably the longest I've had to review a game, and it's pretty nice, especially for this game, which is this huge open world game.
Yeah, I've been in the business for a few years now, but PlayStation hasn't been my main beat. I'm really getting into it now, and even with other companies, this is pretty good amount of time by those standards. Like you said, there is a lot in this game. Like it's a pretty big game map wise, so
Yeah.
it was nice to have the extra time to actually explore the island. Before we get too deep into it, though, what's your general overall take on the game?
I really, really like Ghost of Tsushima. I think when I first started the game, I was kind of in a weird place with it because I was coming off of playing The Last of Us Part 2, and I adored The Last of Us Part 2. And The Last of Us Part 2, of course, is like very much a different kind of game, right? Where it's like linear and narrative focused, and it's Naughty Dog, and so it looks incredible and all these different things. And upon starting Ghost of Tsushima, I actually didn't like it in the first couple of hours while playing it because like there's definitely like a technical shift, when you start a game like that,
Right.
and then the open worldness of it starts to set in, and I'm like, okay, no, this is I understand what's going on here. Like this is a different type of game. I need to like set my expectations accordingly as I'm playing it. And the more and more I played it, the more and more I started to actually go from being like, oh, I don't know about this, to actually growing to love it and adoring it. Like the open world, I think is beautiful. I think the story is really good. I really enjoy the gameplay. Like there's a lot they do with the game that I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm with you there because the last game I played before Ghost of Tsushima was also The Last of Us Part 2. I had been reviewing that as well, and I talked to Greg about it out here on Game Explain a few weeks back now. But there is kind of this, like if you go from that to this, there is kind of this weird like cognitive dissonance where you're expecting something of a different caliber when you first start. And it doesn't help necessarily that if you're going from The Last of Us Part 2 to Ghost of Tsushima, that the opening hour or so of the game is a very guided kind of experience. So it kind of
Yeah.
hits those same receptors, as it were, that you're kind of expecting it to be more like The Last of Us Part 2 based on the initial part of the game. But then,
Yeah, like it starts off super cinematic, which is I think the thing that was kind of getting me to where I was like, okay, yeah, this, like it's trying to be a movie in similar ways that Last was kind of trying to be a movie, right? And it's like, it has these dramatic scenes and these moments of tension, and I was like, all right, why aren't these hitting the way I think they should be hitting? And then you get into the actual game, and it's like, okay, no, this is where the actual meat of this experience is here.
yeah, I agree 100%. Once you get through those first two missions that kind of show you the way of the samurai and the way of the ghost, and then they open up the island to you, you're like, oh, this is not the kind of game that they're kind of making it feel like at the beginning. It's more of a choose your own adventure kind of deal. And I really, that was when the game started to click for me too. I started to realize, okay, this is more like I go around, I find missions to take on, Mongols to slaughter, and it's less of a deep, dark, moody kind of game, and more one that you're just supposed to kick back and enjoy. Like this isn't the type of game that gets you thinking about its themes and ideas. It's not pushing you to really challenge your perception of anything. It's more just have a good time, like, run around this island, do what you want to do. And there is an overarching story, but I don't think it's nearly as core to the experience of Ghost of Tsushima as The Last of Us Part 2's story is.
Yeah. No, I'm there with you. For you, what was your kind of overall takeaway from Ghost of Tsushima?
So I liked the game a lot. I think that it reminded me a lot of an old school Assassin's Creed game. Like if you've, I think between Syndicate and Odyssey, Ubisoft clearly shifted the way they were making these games. In the control scheme and kind of even the way in which you approach exploration and combat is just a lot different between Syndicate and Odyssey. And I think I kind of fell off of Assassin's Creed when they made that change because it felt more kind of like a Souls game in terms of how it controlled and how the combat felt. to me anyway. And I kind of missed that old school, like, okay, you're meant to feel like you're vastly superior to the enemies. You're,
Yeah.
stealth is kind of a thing you can do, but if you want to just rush in and take people on, as long as you know what you're doing, you can, you know, down hordes of people. And so I kind of, uh, it scratched that itch for the Assassin's Creed games of yesteryear for me.
Nice. Yeah, and I see that too. For me, playing through Ghost of Tsushima, the game's kind of a good mix between quite a few open world games. Like one of my favorite games of all time, if not my favorite game of all time, is Breath of the Wild, and I got
Oh yeah.
quite a few Breath of the Wild vibes while playing Ghost of Tsushima, which I appreciated. And that kind of the way I kind of put it is that both my favorite things about Ghost of Tsushima are also kind of like my biggest critiques of Ghost of Tsushima, and that all comes the last with the not last with the Breath of the Wild comparison, because I think the thing that I love so much about Breath of the Wild is that feeling of exploration in a world that feels somewhat tranquil to kind of go through and kind of move through, and that that idea that I can discover things that feel special and I can have these special moments and create my own story while moving through this open world. I feel like Ghost of Tsushima has hints of that, especially toward the first, I'll say, like 10 hours of playing. But at a certain point, right, like the ways in which I'm moving through this world that feels very like happening as you're going, right, where like you're riding through on your horse, you see a fox and you follow the fox, and the fox leads you to a shrine, and then like you're riding to your next objective and you see like a bird and you follow the bird, and that leads you to a new small settlement, or like you're doing your thing, and then like you find some random thing that happens, and it's like, oh cool, like you feel like you're naturally moving through this world, and the world feels all the diegetic elements want you to stay in it and feel immersed. And so like the wind that'll guide you through to your waypoint, or like I said, the foxes or whatever, like all that in-world stuff feels tailor-made to like keep you in the experience and to keep you flowing. At a certain point, that did break down for me, where toward the latter half of the game, I'll look at my map and be like, all right, cool, what are the things I need to check off? What are the things I need to do? Okay, cool, I need to clear off all these different settlements. I need to find all the different fox dens. I need to do all these things that now at this point feel like categories of checkmark missions for me to make my way through. And so like it's not the biggest problem, because I feel like so many open worlds kind of break down like that at a certain point, but I wish there was a little bit more of that discoverability aspect that lingered longer, like for me Breath of the Wild did when I was playing it.
Yeah, I think the Breath of the Wild comparison is really apt here. It's something that I mentioned in my review too, that I got some Breath of the Wild vibes while I was playing this. And the thing I found interesting is that for me, one, the kind of the first Breath of the Wild thing that hit me was aesthetically, in a way. Like when you're riding your horse across like these huge open fields of just tall swaying grass, like it feels like a Breath of the Wild moment. They do a great job making use of color to make you kind of feel like this is a really vibrant, alive place. And I really enjoyed that. And like you said, the other elements like the fox dens, the shrines, which are basically like climbing platforming challenges, did kind of help me feel like, I feel like this was kind of a by the numbers open world game at one point, and then Sucker Punch kind of took note of Breath of the Wild's success and said, oh, hey, there's definitely some stuff we could implement here from that game. I definitely feel its influence in Ghost of Tsushima, but like you said, there does come a point where you kind of feel like you're just marking off items on a checklist. I still haven't platinumed the game, and I plan to. I've never platinumed a game, but Ghost of Tsushima seems like one that I might actually get there with. And I'm currently at a point where it's like, okay, I look at the map and I'm just like, what undiscovered locations are there? How can I fast travel to hit the most locations at in one trip? So it does, but I think, like you said, that's something that a lot of open world games kind of fall victim to past a certain point, because there's a limited number of activities. And I think Breath of the Wild kind of captured this kind of magic where you feel like there are no limitations placed on you within that world. And I think Tsushima doesn't quite reach that high of a point, but it does a good job at keeping you engrossed in its world and keeping you wanting to explore. I actually really liked that there were techniques you can learn to kind of point the guiding wind towards more explorative opportunities. So I can say, oh, I want to look up, I want to find sword kits. So I can set the guiding wind to point me to the closest sword kit, which I thought was pretty cool. I wish they'd expanded on that a little bit more, because you can't get one for every element. Like, if I remember correctly, you can't find bamboo strikes with that, which I think resolve is a huge component in this game. It's the most valuable resource by far. And there's no way to easily find those without just kind of exploring the map completely. But I'm curious, let's shift gears over to the combat, because at least for me, that was one of the most engrossing parts of the game. What did you think of the combat system specifically?
At first, I honestly didn't like it. First, I was like, "Oh, why isn't there a lock on?" I think coming into it, I didn't expect it to be what it ended up being, and I think part of that is on me, because going in, I was kind of expecting like a Souls like Jedi Fallen Order, Bloodborne, like, hey, you are locking on and you are parrying and you are attacking, you're striking at the right time, akin to something like Sekiro.
Yeah,
that's kind of what I was going in expecting, and I don't know why I expected that. I think it was just the fact that, like, it's a sword game, and I think that's the right type of combat to do when swords are involved.
Right.
The more and more I played it, though, the more and more I started to appreciate it, especially when you start getting upgrades and things start opening up, because like with the combat, you have different stances that you can do, and the different stances affect how you're able to take down different enemies. And so, like, you have a stance that is specifically to combat enemies that are sword enemies. You have like a shield stance that'll take down enemies with shields. You have another stance that's for spears, and like it upgrades that way. And so, like, once I started getting into that, and once I started unlocking like the quick fire weapons that are like your kunai and stuff like that, that you like tap R1 for, and that'll be a quick thing in a bind. Once I started to like get into the flow of it and start to like learn the different tools at your disposal and actually make use of that stuff, I started to really enjoy it. And so like I think the shift that I had to make in my brain was like, all right, this is an open world game. Like, it's not, the combat is a lot less Jedi Fallen Order and a lot more like Batman or Spider-Man, where it is like you have a bunch of enemies on you and you're kind of bouncing back and forth and trying to manage, like, all right, how do I make sure that I'm taking out everybody? And so I really liked it for that. And also, like, I found that the more and more I played, and this is kind of by design of the story and the progression and your upgrades and all that stuff, the more and more I played, the more and more I shifted toward using stealth and shifted more toward using like the ghost abilities, which are like your like assassination, you're in the shadows kind of stuff. And that stuff I really grew to dig. And so when it came to getting into like settlements and clearing out like an encampment of enemies, I found that that started becoming more and more enjoyable, because of the idea that I could plan my way through and go in and be like, all right, cool. The way I play, I usually like to take out, let's say, 6-7 people through stealth, and then at a certain point, I'll then shift gears toward going all offense, and then, like, wild out and actually start facing people face to face. And that kind of depth and that kind of choice that you can have in approaching combat, I thought was super fun and super enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I think you and I played this game in very similar ways, despite maybe having different expectations. I definitely preferred almost exactly that method. Like, I would go in, I'd go to an encampment, and I would just pick off, as many people as I could, while and then once I'd whittled it down to what I deemed a manageable number of people, I'd just hop out and start killing people. Later in the game, since this is going up post embargo, we can talk about this. Later in the game, you unlock the ghost stance, which allows you to just push L3 and R3 after you've killed, like, depending on the armor you have, like anywhere between 5 and 7 people, and you can just take down 3 people in one hit.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's so satisfying, and I could be wrong. Well, okay, aside from slaughtering a leader, which I'll talk about more in a bit, it's one of the only times where you dismember someone in this game. Like, when you cut those people down, like, you'll slice their arm off or whatever along with their sword, and you can terrify people. And like you, as the story went on, I kind of started leaning more into the ghost stuff, like realizing like, oh, well, this is the way the story's going. I don't need to worry about an honor system or fighting honorably. It's not going to change anything for me. So, I would just go nuts by the end of it. I would just see a group of guys and I'm like, I'm firing an explosive arrow right into the middle of this and letting
Yeah.
them burn. Whereas I think before, like in the very early part of the game, I would try to walk up and do the standoff mechanic and then, challenge people like, and you realize really quickly that that's just not going to work in a lot of cases unless you're super upgraded. Like you're going to get taken out
Oh man,
quickly.
you're talking to somebody who's kind of super upgraded now to where, like, with the ghost stance, right? Like the way you unlock is by getting 7 kills without taking damage. And I found, so the game's really cool in the ways that it allows you to kind of customize based on your gear. And so like I found that, all right, if I put on my samurai outfit or whatever, or like my Sakai armor or whatever at the max leveled up stage, I can then kill a certain number of people in standoff mode, and that'll get me enough people to where if I kill a couple more, then I can get the ghost stance, and then like basically I've cleared off an entire encampment just based off of that first interaction.
Oh yeah.
It's so satisfying when you're able to like pull that stuff off, right? Because those are kind of the two ways now that I play. Is either I'm stealthing in and I'm taking out people fairly quickly because I'm at a point in the game where I'm pretty powered up, or I'm going that ghost stance route, or not ghost. I'm going the standoff route, and I am like slaughtering, and it feels so good to do.
Yeah, I agree. My move right now at the point I'm at in the game is that if I see a standoff and there's like a good sized group of enemies there, I'll quickly switch to the Sakai armor, then I'll do the standoff, and then I will switch back to the ghost armor because it lowers the requirement for the ghost stance, and then go immediately into that. Because if you chain like a perfect perfect standoff, you get enough kills if you switch back to the ghost armor to go right into the ghost stance. So I've been I've been abusing that. But yeah, it is really satisfying to go in and just clear out like a huge group of enemies. They do a good job of selling the power fantasy in this game. Like you start and I think that's another thing that kind of clicks with me that also works for Breath of the Wild is in Breath of the Wild you start out and you're just weak. Like you can't do much. Like you're struggling to deal with the first couple of bokoblins.
You got sticks, you're naked. Like,
yeah.
It's like, all right, well, I'm starting at the very bottom.
Exactly. And you're not much better when you start off here. Like you've got broken armor on. It doesn't do anything for you. You've got your sword. You don't really have a whole lot else. And you kind of learn quickly like, oh, all these supplies laying around. I can upgrade my sword. I can upgrade my Tanto. And you, if you follow the character quest, you get armor really quick early on in the game so that you're not wearing this beat up broken stuff. And it was really clicking for me once I started doing those upgrades. Once I went through and realized like, oh man, I can just like loot these camps and get all these resources and go back and see a blacksmith or an armorer and really fix myself up. That's when I really started to feel like I actually could gain an advantage in these battles. And that's not to say the game is really hard, but I think it encourages you to go out of your way to find that stuff and kind of upgrade Gene so that he's a lot more capable in combat.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I will say that, like, even though one of my critiques of this game is that at a certain point it does kind of break down and become this open world that is filled with a lot of like copy and paste like objectives or like fox dens or a bunch of these different things that are cut and paste. I do think they have like the stuff that they have there, the activities that they have that are cut and paste, I think are pretty good. Like the game is really fun. It's really enjoyable to like just make your way through the world and like check off all those different tasks that you have at your disposal. And so like moving through the world and being able to collect different gear, be able to collect headbands and like masks and all this different stuff in itself is just a really, really fun experience in this game.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun in collecting them. I do agree, like you said, that it does start to feel like they've just copy pasted a few key activities ad nauseum throughout the world. And there are some that honestly I'm not a big fan of, like the hot springs. I don't care. I mean, it's cool that you get a life upgrade, but it's like a sliver of health. Like it's almost imperceptible.
It is the smallest sliver. It's like, okay, does that do anything for me? Like, and again, that kind of comes back to like the Zelda thing of like, okay, yeah, cool. Like I can see what you're doing, because it is almost the equivalent of getting one heart piece in Zelda.
Yeah.
But I feel like the difference is like you start off with like a pretty good amount of health in this game, and then they're adding in like the smallest sliver, so you don't really feel it in the same way where you feel it in something like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, it's just not impactful. Like the first few I did, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like I can go get an armor that offers me like a damage decrease, and that feels, like I'm actually getting something. And I think a few of them suffer from the fact that you have to do so many of them to get an actual benefit. Like the Fox Shrines, I mean, the first one, it's like you do one, but after seemingly not very long, like you got to do like 5 or 6 just to get one more charm slot. Or with the bamboo strikes, it's like you got to find 5 of these just to get one more resolve. And it feels like, at a certain point you just say, well, I can either spend a few hours hunting these down, or I can just go on and do the next thing. And for me, that's ultimately what ended up happening. Was I wanted more resolve, but I also didn't want to have to hunt for it. So I was just like, what, I can probably make do with what I've got, and I'm just gonna beef up my sword and my armor so that I take less damage and I deal more damage, and that'll probably make up for the gap in my ability to use techniques more often, like kunai and stuff like that. I can just cut people down instead. And that brings me to another thing, is the technique point system, which I'm kind of indifferent on. What's your take on how you unlock techniques?
It's kind of basic, right? Like it is kind of what you expect from this kind of game, where it's like at a certain point I'm gonna unlock everything, like pretty much. Like it's not. I mean, it's me and Greg on PSLW, we were kind of going back and forth about how we would categorize this game, because he mentioned like, oh yeah, this is pretty much like an open world RPG, and I was like, I don't know if I would say it's an RPG, but I could see like maybe it's an RPG light. Like, in certain games, and mainly in RPGs, right, you have like skill trees, and you kind of have to make the decision of, all right, which direction do I want to take this character, or how do I actually want to play? Whereas in a game like this, like you have that choice, but for the most part, we're all gonna land in the same place as far as what our abilities are in our different games, right? Like we're mainly unlocking, like we're gonna all unlock everything pretty much, but it's just how do you want to get there? That is the difference. And like the actual abilities that they give you to unlock, I think are all pretty useful, but they're also at the same time like pretty standard. Like it's stuff like unlock the ability where you can do like the assassination chain, which is a really cool thing, where if you assassinate one person, you can then assassinate 2 more people that are around them. Really cool ability. But it's stuff like that. Stuff like well, I will say they do have quite a few different, I guess, trees that you can put points into, because they do have like the samurai stuff, but then they do also have the ghost tree, which is like your in the shadows, like stealth stuff that I think is pretty cool. And then they also have trees for your specific stances that'll like strengthen those stances, or like unlock new combos that you can initiate in those stances. Like it's stuff that again feels pretty standard. Like for the most part, I enjoyed the upgrade trees and the skill points and all that stuff, but it's also not something I would write home about. Like it's not something around like, you guys gotta check out the skill tree,
Yeah, I agree, and I think I'm leaning more towards your side in the fact that I don't feel like Ghost of Tsushima is an RPG. I think it's better described as like a stealth action game, or even an action adventure. I mean, in the same way that I wouldn't describe Breath of the Wild as an RPG, or an Assassin's Creed game, which is the other series I liken it to. I wouldn't describe either of those as RPGs, really. I just think that there's not enough of that connective tissue to make it feel like it's in that genre. I definitely feel like this is more of just kind of a light action adventure type of game. It's not heavy on narrative, which again I feel like is another key staple of the RPG genre, which we'll talk more about in a sec. But the technique tree, or the skill tree, there's a lot of stuff there. I think they did a good job of not making it feel like overly complex, even though there is a ton of stuff to unlock in there. I think breaking it up into a few different menus makes it feel less daunting, but I agree that that's not going to be what I tell people to look at when they play this game. Like, I'm not going to be like, yo, check out the skill tree. Like, there's so much stuff.
Yeah. Like, there are very few things. Like, I was talking to a couple of other people as I was playing this game who were also playing the game. And, I was telling them about how, oh, yeah, like, at some points when I'm playing through an encampment and I'm trying to clear out a camp, I'll find that I can't find anybody else because like the camps are so big that I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like running around in circles trying to figure out where the rest of the enemies are so I can go take them out. And they were like, oh, did you upgrade your vision? Because if you press the touchpad on the controller, that'll then like open you up so you can see where enemies are through like this X-ray vision kind of thing. And they were like, yeah, did you upgrade that? And I was like, no, I didn't really think that'd be that useful. And they're like, upgrade it. And I upgraded and I was like, oh, I can see through the future. Like I can see them all now. And so like it is like useful, and like you do have revelations like that I think are super helpful and do like change the game in pretty helpful ways.
Yeah, there's definitely good stuff in there. I mean, and it does add, there is additive value to it. Like it makes you feel like the game gets better for certain skills. And one of the ones that I wish I'd upgraded sooner was the shield stance, because there's one, I can't remember where it's at in that tree, but it basically makes it so that if someone with a spear is attacking you, like if you're simultaneously attacking, you automatically parry whatever they're doing. And that saved me so many times. I was just like, I can't believe I didn't do this. Yeah, the spear guys.
I definitely messed up with that stuff because I didn't upgrade any of the stand stuff, because I looked at it and I was like, because the first upgrade for all the stances are like, oh yeah, you unlock the combo where it's like hold triangle and then triangle,
Yep.
and I'm like, that does not sound interesting to me. If this is just combo stuff, I don't care because I like the way the game plays anyway. And I was talking to Greg also again on PS Levy, and he was like, oh yeah, like once I started getting further in those trees, it started unlocking stuff like that, and I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, hearing stuff like this is very, very fascinating because I didn't know that was an option either.
Yeah, there's some really, really good stuff in there, and I was deeply surprised to find out, like, because like you, I ultimately ended up doing it, but they were some of the last upgrades I did. And I was sitting there just cursing these spearmen. I'm like, man, they're so hard to like parry and work around because they have so much more reach, and I'm just not reading them appropriately. And then I finally got it, and I was just like, wow, this would have made so many moments during this game easier for me. And I wish I'd just scrolled down and read them. But yeah, it's I mean, the skill tree's cool. It's inoffensive. It doesn't bug me. I wouldn't say it's a positive or a negative as far as the game is concerned. But one thing I want to talk about, so the story to me is really interesting, and I haven't spoken to too many people who have played the game. So you're one of the only people to this point that I've spoken to who has actually played through the game. John on our side is playing it as well, but he hasn't finished it yet, so I've been trying to avoid talking to him about it. Tell me, what's your take on the main story?
I really liked it. It's like a pretty basic story because it is kind of like, I'm gonna do what I can to liberate my people, right?
Right.
And it's him going from the way of the samurai to the way of the ghost, and how that kind of conflicts with his uncle, who is like this, the leader of Sushima, and he is about honor and he is about doing things the right way. And it kind of, in a way, it's kind of like a Batman story because he kind of turns into like this Batman character, like you as Jin, you turn into like this Batman character of like, hey, I'm gonna do what I can to save my people. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the presentation of it because it does kind of feel like watching this Western-made samurai film that is kind of like this Hollywood blockbuster kind of thing. It's not necessarily like, it didn't blow my socks off at any point, but it was enjoyable. I enjoyed the different characters. Jin himself, I thought, like, I'm not in love with Jin's character, but I did like. At first, I thought it was pretty milquetoast, to be honest. But like toward the latter half of the game, and especially toward the ending, I started to warm up to his character a bit and start to actually enjoy him. But yeah, overall, like, I thought the story was pretty good. I think honestly, the side stuff is where the game shines a lot, in terms of like the side quests and the Tales of Tsushima, as they're called. Like you have like character quests that are almost akin to like social links in Persona, or like confidant levels in Persona, where it is, all right, you have Lady Masako, who's a character in the game, and there are 9 different quests that you can do that relate to Lady Masako, and like if you do all of them, then you get her full story. I thought that stuff was really good and really interesting, and I liked the writing and so much of it. But yeah, the main story I thought was good. Like, I enjoyed it. It's not like the best story in the world, but I thought it was very enjoyable.
Yeah, I think the main story serves as a really good backdrop for the fights that you're going to encounter along the way. Like there's always something to motivate Jean to move forward. Like, in the initially your uncle gets captured and the main thrust is to just go save him. So you have to recruit allies and do all this other stuff to get him back. And then, you're basically traveling north up the island, pushing back the Mongol invasion until you finally force them, until you finally face the Khan at the very end. And meanwhile, like you said, Gene's thoughts, like, his motivations never waver. Like he wants to save the island and save his countrymen from, this invasion, but his methods evolve over time. Like he starts thinking more about like, okay, I understand that, we want to fight the enemy honorably and we want to do all this, but everyone's going to die. Like we already saw what happened at the beach. Everyone got wiped. We're if we do this again, we're all just going to be dead. And, he comes into conflict with his uncle over the path that he's choosing to take to liberate his people. And I mean, it's all right. Like it works. It's serviceable, but it doesn't make you think. It doesn't really, it's not a heavy, impactful story. But coming back to what you said about the side quests,
Details.
I loved those. I haven't finished them all yet, but they're definitely the best stuff happening in Tsushima from a narrative perspective is happening in those side quests. I can't remember her name, but there's one that really stuck with me about Jean's caretaker.
Oh yeah.
And that one was like messed up. Like she, she kind of spirals into dementia as you go through the quests, and ends up revealing like a bunch of stuff about Jean's childhood that I was just like, whoa, man, that's pretty heavy for 14th century Japan. Like that's, same for Masako. I just finished hers yesterday, and I was like, whoa, there's some interesting details revealed about these people in these quests that I was just like, wow, I can't believe that they're putting this stuff in here. So if you are playing the game, like I think the best moments happen outside of the main storyline, but that's not to say that the main storyline is bad by any stretch. It's just kind of there. Like it works and it serves its purpose, but
it struck me as like a standard samurai story. Like it's all about honor. It's all about like, it's all about fighting back against the Mongols and like stuff that I think you'd expect the game to touch on. I will say I think the thing I do like about the main story is that I think it has moments. Like I think the story has good moments that stuck with me, especially like toward the second half of the game, that like had me going like, whoa, I didn't expect that to happen. They're somewhat few and far between, but like they're there and they're enjoyable.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that there are things that happen in the story that it's just like, wow, I didn't see that happening, or I didn't see the way that Jean would react to this event. Like there are certain things that I felt like were some good moments, but overall I'd say that it's a story that just does its job. It and it doesn't ask too much of the player to like really wrap their mind around it. Like it's a very easy story to kind of grasp and understand. There's not a whole lot happening beneath the surface, and I think that's okay. Like we were talking about this kind of as a cinematic experience at the beginning of this discussion, and I think if I were to liken this to a movie, it would be more like just kind of like a popcorn flick, like a really good chill movie to like enjoy but not really like think too deeply about. And I think that's okay. Like I think that not every game needs to be a real thought-provoking masterpiece. I don't think Ghost of Tsushima is one of those games that drives you to think about its themes, but it is absolutely entertaining. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I'm still playing it, which is pretty rare. Like in this business, oftentimes when I'm done with a review, I'm done with the game for a very long time too. Like I don't go back and revisit these after I've done the work. So the fact that I'm still playing it, several days after the review's gone live says something about it. And I'm excited to finish it. I hope I'll platinum it, but we'll see. Have you platinumed the game yet, or?
No, so the way I played it, since we were playing it for review, since it's 3-act structure, and so there's 3 acts in the game,
right?
And toward Act 1, I was doing all the side stuff. I was trying to clear things out, and at a certain point, I think I was like a week into playing it, and I was like, oh, I'm not making good time. If I keep doing this, I'm not going to beat the game on time. And so, like, starting with Act 2, I then, like, I basically just mainlined it and ended up beating it like a week before the review was done, was needed to be recorded for Kind of Funny. And I was like, oh shoot, I could have spent all that time doing side stuff, but oh well. And so now I've been going back and I've been clearing a lot of the side activities, but I think the game is way better played doing that stuff as you're making your way through the main story as opposed to going back after. I feel, because now that I'm going back, I'm really starting to feel like the okay, cool, I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna do this fox den, all right, now I'm gonna do the side quest, all right, cool, now I'm gonna go over here and do this bamboo challenge, all right, cool, now, okay, another fox den, all right, cool, now I gotta clear these encampments, all right, another fox den. Like, I'm starting to feel that rotation of doing all the side stuff. And so I want to platinum it, but it's not looking favorable right now, because I'm still back at like the first part of the island trying to clear stuff.
Yeah, so we kind of, it's funny to me how similar our trajectories were with playing this game, because we didn't talk at all. But I had kind of that same revelation where I was playing it and I was doing all the side stuff. Like, I started ignoring the main quest and like, okay, you know, I can go over here, I can go over here, I can collect this stuff, you know, I can do these smaller encampments that don't really have any purpose. And there was a point where I just kind of realized, like, oh no, like, embargo's coming up, I've got to finish this. Like, I can't just say I played a bunch of side quests 10 out of 10. So I've got to finish the game and find out how it wraps up. And I did the same thing. Like, halfway through Act 2, I was like, okay, I just got to push through. I'm more than strong enough. I can handle this. And I pushed my way through the story. And like you, I had almost an entire week after that. And so I just started immediately, like, okay, you know, going back through it, but it does lose some of its charm if you do it that way. And I think the right way to play this game is to just kind of let it, you know, like, if you feel like exploring something, just go do it. And that luxury of time is not something we always have. But I think if you're picking it up like on release and you're playing it, like, go nuts, do the side stuff. I think it's great content, and I think it will make the entirety of your trip a lot more enjoyable if you just kind of let yourself go off the beaten path and do all the stuff you want to do. And definitely check out the side quests, because they are the best character writing in the entire game, hands down.
Did you check out the photo mode much? Because that's something that was slowing me down a lot. And that was like the thing where I was like, man, I gotta keep going.
Yeah, so I didn't check it out that much during the review period. And honestly, your tweets and Greg's kind of got me to start looking at it, because I was like, man, I in the review I mentioned, like, you know, I'm not good at photo mode. Like, some people with talent are gonna pick this up and create beautiful screenshots, though, because it's super powerful. Like, it's honestly probably the best photo mode I've ever seen in any game. You know, and
I love it so much.
Yeah, it's amazing. You just push right on the D-pad, and then you have all these tools at your disposal, and you can take some stunning screenshots really easily with this. Like, I really dug into it last night because I was thinking, like, oh man, embargo's going to be up and I can just start posting whatever. So I'm going to go get some good shots for social media. And I was shocked by how easy it was for even someone like me who doesn't have an eye for this stuff to get some good looking screens out of this game. I took a couple where I was like chopping some dude apart. I took, you know, just your standard screenshots of big wide open spaces and that kind of thing. And I love it, man. This game, from a technical level, is, I mean, it's not the prettiest game. Like, let me put it out there. You know, if you go from The Last of Us Part 2 like we did into this, you'll definitely see the seams a little. Like, you'll see that it's not like a technical powerhouse in the sense that, you know, it's not pushing the PS4's graphics tech to its limit, but I mean, load times in this game are ridiculous. Like, they're so short.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's like, I think the thing the game does so well is having style. Like, that's the thing that kind of elevates how it looks, because it's probably one of the most stunning games that I played this generation. And like, I agree with you that, like, I don't think it's like a technical masterpiece, but like, it looks beautiful. Like the way the trees, the leaves look are beautiful. The way the wind blows and the way you see particles flowing through the wind, like, you know, whether it's leaves or whether it's like fireflies or whether it's like ash or whatever it may be, right? Like, you know,
Right.
they do such a good job of the actual, you know, artistry of it and the visual design of it that makes that world, you know, feel like it almost like it is a technical masterpiece, despite it being like, I mean, it's technically very impressive, but it's not Last of Us Part 2 in how like good the textures look and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like I wouldn't point to this game as an example of like the best graphics on PlayStation, but it is beautiful. Like there's, like you said, just, you know, particle effects are crazy. The island itself looks gorgeous, and it is owed in large part to just the style and the use of color and how everything feels. Like it's you can look out over like a ridge or something and just realize like this is a beautiful world. Like they did such a great job with this, that it is still one of the prettier games of this generation, even if it isn't like a technical masterpiece in the traditional sense. It looks great. It's really, you know, nice to be in this world and take part in it, but also, you know, like you said, there's just this immersive quality to it. I really enjoy playing this game, being on this island, and it's not necessarily something that 10 years from now I'm going to say, wow, this still holds up visually, but it's something that I think that they've done some crazy good work with. Like I would love to talk to the guys at Sucker Punch and find out how they made those load times so short, because, you know, that's the PS5's thing.
I know one of the tricks that was mentioned, I don't know how true it is, but I assume it's true, is that when you get knocked down in the game, or like killed, basically, like when you die in combat, there's like a period in which your body is just laying there and you're waiting for one of the Mongols or one of the enemies to come through and actually put down the final blow. As I understand it, like during that period, the game is then loading in again. Like that is hiding load time there.
That's pretty clever.
And so like, yeah, they're doing like really clever things to like make it feel like the game's not loading, despite it like doing all that in the background.
That's pretty cool too. I mean, one of the things I noted in my review was just fast travel, and there's so many points on this map that you can fast travel between.
Oh yeah.
And it's so short. It actually feels incredibly fast, which is cool. Like it has me, you know, in a weird way excited for next gen, just because, you know, they've talked up the PlayStation 5 and how it's going to dramatically reduce load times, and I'm wondering, like, if you can achieve this on PlayStation 4, what are we going to see on PS5? Is it like instantaneous, or you know, what's going to happen there? But final thoughts on the game. I think it's just an incredibly gorgeous, really fun game. I enjoyed my time with it. I'm still playing it, but I think at a certain point, like you said, the seams start to show and it becomes kind of more of a standard open world affair. But again, I don't think that those things are necessarily like negatives. It can be, not every game has to be this incredible, you know, showcase or a masterpiece that challenges genre definitions and breaks the mold. I think that this fits nicely into an existing mold, and it's a great example of a specific type of game.
Yeah, and I 100% agree, right? Like, I feel like this game feels like a combination of things, you know, like The Witcher, Breath of the Wild, Assassin's Creed, but it's not necessarily as good as Breath of the Wild or The Witcher or like the best open world games of this generation.
Right.
But I think what it does well, like it does what it does very well. And so like, even though in a lot of ways it does feel standard, I think the game makes standard feel really fun. Like, the game's such an enjoyable game to play. It is also such like a tranquil, like chill game to play in the way that it, like, everything in the game just feels tranquil and relaxing. It's laid back, and like it does such a good job of that. It does such a good job of having style, and the ways in which I think it goes for it are like, you know, like the ways in which it goes for it are different than just like hey, how do we further the open world genre? It's more so like, hey, how do we make a really good samurai game where you can explore and do all those things? And I think they do a phenomenal job of that. And so yeah, like I'm definitely with you to where it breaks down at a certain point as far as like, all right, yeah, this is an open world video game, but you know, it's not necessarily a negative. Yeah,
100%. Any other final thoughts you want to give on the Ghost of Tsushima?
Man, that photo mode. I'm obsessed with it. Like that's like the thing that keeps me coming back is that photo mode and wanting to take more photos and post more photos. Like, even more so than clearing the rest of my side quests. And so, yeah, have fun with it. Like, I highly recommend people check that out. Like, for me, as somebody who's historically not even a photo mode person, I've never really cared about a photo mode that much in a game. This time around, I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm with you in that I'm not usually into photo mode. I've checked it out in a few games, like The Last of Us Part 2 had photo mode, and I didn't really use it. But the Ghost of Tsushima has easily the best one in any console game, probably any game anywhere. And it's just incredibly user-friendly, which I think is something that a lot of photo modes mess up on. But yeah, I think that about wraps it up. So, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to Game Explained for much more on Ghost of Tsushima and all other things gaming as well. Thank you so much to my special guest, Blessing Adeoye Jr. of Kinda Funny. Where can we find you at, Blessing?
Thanks again for having me. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Blessing Jr. That's at Blessing JR. And of course, I'm on Kinda Funny Games, specifically youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames. And I host Kinda Funny Games daily all the time. I'm on PSLU XOXO. I'm on game streams, all that good stuff. So go ahead and check out youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames.
Yeah, please make sure to go ahead and drop them a subscription. I've been on the channel once or twice, and I've enjoyed it every time that I'm on. Great group of people over there. So please make sure to subscribe, and I'll actually drop a link to some of their more recent content in the description below, so feel free to check those out. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and end the discussion today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.